Welcome to Ink and Bones. My name is Jaden. In this video, we're going to go through the page 4 inks of my creator-owned Halloween comic book, The Spooky Adventures of Patti and Jack. And for page 4, I have 3 things that I mainly want to focus on. Really want to make sure that Jack's personality comes through. On this page, he's convinced that he's the best at Halloween, and somehow he always just seems to come home with more candy than everybody. And second, for my art objective, I want the relationship between Patti and Jack to come across as natural. They're friends, they're comfortable with each other, they give each other a hard time, but they, at the core of everything, are buds. And then that brings me to my creative lesson, which is to let your characters reveal themselves. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the inks. So right off the bat, the thing I really love about Jack is that his personality really comes through. I don't have to stop the story and explain who he is. I can very much showcase that even by his wardrobe. He's kind of dressed punk with his very expressive jack-o'-lantern cutout face. I can really exaggerate his expressions, and he is the one that tells us, or rather shows us, who he actually is. He knows that he's gonna get the most candy. He knows he's gonna win Halloween if it was a competition. And of course, because his head is literally a pumpkin, he makes a comment to her in that last panel, that big shot of both of them, of him stretching out that mask. He's telling her, like, I don't need a mask. All I got is my face, and I'll still beat everybody on the block. And without words, you can tell exactly what he's doing on this page. He's getting more candy than everybody. He's walking away eating his little sucker, and then he's teasing Patti with the mask at the end. He shows you very much who he is as a person. He's very confident and likes to show off. And that's something I'm trying to keep in mind throughout this book is, characterization through interaction. The characters shouldn't exist independently of each other. We know a lot about people by how they interact with each other. How Patti reacts, it tells us something about Patti, and how Jack reacts to Patti reacting tells us something about Jack. The kids and the parent in the background who are, none too pleased about Jack's little stunt of taking all the candy, how they're interacting gives us, the reader, information to go off of. And then that just kind of makes the world feel a little bit more real, and it builds the relationship between all of these characters. And I think that's what also makes Halloween pretty fun. At least for me, I definitely was the more, not competitive, but I wanted to have a bitchin' costume. Not something you get at the Halloween store. You go to Spirit and buy a fucking plastic bag full of whatever. I wanted to make my own costume. I wanted to look the goriest, to look the most beat up or dead or scary, whatever my theme was. I wanted to make sure that I was, dressing to the nines for Halloween. I had some intel about who was giving out the biggest candy bars on the block. I knew what neighborhoods to go to get the king-size bars. Some of these people, there was the Richie Rich neighborhoods, which we had to hop some fences to get into, but they would even hand out like $5 bills wrapped around a Snickers bar and shit like that. So to a certain extent, Jack is an extension of myself. I wasn't a dick about anything, but he's trying to show off that he's the coolest. Halloween is his, it's his day. He is a jack-o'-lantern, and he's definitely trying to showcase that on this little Halloween adventure that these two go on. And why this matters, to me at least, is that, one of the biggest things that I've learned, especially from working on this comic book and analyzing some other characters that I really enjoy reading or watching, is that you don't really need to be told why you like the character. You just need to spend time with the character, and then gradually, like in real life, you actually start enjoying that character's company. The jokes that they make, the traits that they have, the mistakes that they may make, how excited they get over something trivial, all these things kind of add up. And then eventually, hopefully, the reader isn't thinking of, wow, this character is really well written. They just like the guy or the girl, and they want to spend time with them. And that's really the job of this page is, it's not really trying to move the story forward. This is the start of the main plot of the little story that I got going on here. But mainly it's just giving us another little insight as to these two characters, Patti and Jack, their dynamic. Page 3 was getting these two together, and page 4 is just giving us a better idea of who they are and what they want as far as this story goes. And by the time we get into the big trick-or-treat challenge that these guys embark on, you kind of already have an idea of how this may go. So I think that's the big takeaway from page 4. You don't need to tell your audience who your characters are. This isn't Netflix where every 10 minutes we need to have someone reiterating what the plot is and what character is trying to do what. Just give them moments that allow the audience and the readers to figure out who the characters are. Jack doesn't need to tell me that he's confident. He doesn't need to say, I'm so confident I'm gonna win. He just cracks a couple jokes, does a couple things, and you know exactly what his goals and intentions are. And in Jack's words, he doesn't need a frivolous mask to do so. Alright, and that about does it for the page. Now let's go ahead and check out the finished inks. Well, that about does it for the page 4 inks. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw and you want to see some more, consider subscribing, slash that like button. If you want to see the pencils and the inks and some colors that I've done so far for the book, go ahead and check out the Patti and Jack playlist. And for now, that has been another episode of Ink and Bones, and I will see you on the next page.